You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Hello, everybody. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast, and welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, we're going to talk about language. We're going to talk about how language affects what you think, affects what you feel, and actually affects your reality and your outcome. So I want you to get comfortable. And as you get comfortable in your own environment of choice, I invite you to think back to a time when you had a relationship that was absolutely glorious. Now discover what experiences touch you and stand out to you right now, and note which lessons from this that you want to keep. Remember and take forward in the future these memories, situations, and changes in the way you want to be. That is also something that makes you have control over your life. And it's good to know that, isn't it? So there is some complex sentence that brought up memories for you. So I want to talk about language with you. I want to talk about self-talk and being specific. And I'm going to give you some reframing exercises. And we're just going to cover a few because there is so much to this self-talk. What is self-talk, first of all? It's that little voice in your head. Yep, that little voice that is saying, oh, here she goes again. That little voice, that's the one I'm talking about. That is the chatter that is going on in your mind day in and day out. I know for me, it never shuts up until I'm asleep. And then, I'm sure it's still talking while I'm dreaming. So that self-talk, what you think, what you believe to be true, it all comes to pass because that is where you place your focus on that self-talk, and energy flows where focus goes. And energy is what creates your reality. It creates life itself. So we're going to talk a little bit about some types of self-talk. And it could be self and what you say to yourself. Quite frequently you say to others. So we'll take one which is mind reading, which is my favorite. And mind reading happens because your brain needs a full story. In fact, all of these happen because your brain needs a full story. And we communicate in words that have gaps. And we're going to talk about some of the ways that we communicate with others and with ourselves. And in that gap, your brain is going to fill in the blanks in order to have a story that satisfies your reality, not the reality, but satisfies your reality in the moment. So mind reading is assuming that you understand what other people are thinking without any real evidence. So someone ignores you, let's say, that and they just kind of walk by you, or they don't respond right away to your question. Maybe even today in texting, right? During texting, people text me, don't expect me to respond right away. I don't respond to the ding. And so we'll assume that this space means I'm ignoring you, that I don't like you, that maybe I hate you, right? Or maybe if you're in a relationship and someone doesn't respond, they're with someone else, right? They don't care about me. This isn't important to them. You don't know that, but you will mind read. Your brain is going to do this. So I invite you to practice when you hear yourself saying, he hates me, she hates me, this isn't working, they're doing this. Ask yourself, what evidence do you have that this is true? What is the evidence that you have in this moment, not in the past, in this moment, that what you're thinking, what you're feeling about the situation is true? What is the evidence? And odds are there isn't any evidence. Think about it. Mind reading. We do that very well, actually. Overgeneralization. That's another one. So we overgeneralize and we undergeneralize, but we're going to talk about overgeneralizations today. That's the habit that we have of telling ourselves, or the habit that you have, as do I, that a negative event is bound to continue happening in the future. And we might even exaggerate the event, right? And we'll make predictions about the future based on little evidence. So there is evidence, but little evidence in the present. Many times I will be having a conversation with someone, specifically clients, but even with friends, right? And they will be agonizing over what could be happening in the future. And I'm like, you're living in the future of possibilities that just may never happen. You're spending energy that could be spent in a more productive way on something that may or may not happen. And this is not risk management. This is agonizing. And words like, so this always happens to me, right? I get cut off at a Rotary. This always happens to me. I always get cut off when I'm at the Rotary, right? Or you go shopping and you're getting ready to get in line to go through an aisle to pay, and someone cuts you off. Or even more likely, you're in the aisle and it seems to be taking forever. All the other aisles are going really quickly, and yours, I always get the slowest line. No matter what, whatever line I pick, there's always a problem at the register. It's not necessarily true. So you're thinking ahead, right? And so what happens is when you go to a register, you're looking at them all and finally say, it doesn't matter which one I go to, it's going to be the slowest because I always pick the slowest. But you always show up late when we have plans. Talk about how that affects a relationship. So you're waiting for someone and they don't show up on time. You always show up late when we have plans. Is that true? Always. And so ask yourself these words, always, right? And then you're projecting into the future. First of all, is always true, right? And then if you're projecting into the future, stop and pull back. And what's going on right now? Let me deal with right now, with this very moment. And no, you're not always late when you have plans with me. Sometimes you're on time. You're frequently late, right? If you're in a relationship with somebody who is habitually late to the party, then you know that this is who they are. They're probably always late with other people. And I bet if you track it, it's not always. Frequently, but not always. It's just that when it happens, you feel like it's an always situation. So think about how you might use that language on yourself. I am always having a hard time. I'm always dealing with the most difficult. I always get in relationships with narcissists. I always, and that's not true. But if you think you always do, then you're going to feel that way and you're actually going to seek that out. So stop. And do you always? Is every relationship you're in, friends relationship, family relationships, partner and lover relationships, your own relationship, is it always like that? And if the answer is no, then you need to reframe that. And then sometimes I do choose that, but there are sometimes I choose this. So let's take a look at what goes on when I choose this. What am I thinking, feeling, doing that I choose something different than what I think I do always? And focus on that instead. Now, the next one is black and white thinking. Now, I remember as a young adult, my life was black and white. You either were with me or you were against me. You either were right or you were left, right? You were either conservative or you were, or you weren't, right? It just black and white. Everything was black and white. And it was easy for me to put up boundaries in a black and white world. Black and white was very harsh and not real. When gray started to seep into my life, I was incredibly lost and confused because that impacted my boundaries and it impacted my reality. It impacted my belief system. I had to really sit down and ask myself some serious questions about what reality is. So when we think about black and white, something like a sentence like this: I have delivered, or I did not deliver exactly what the client wanted. I am such an idiot. I've managed this team, and no matter what I do, we can't seem to hit the mark. I am so stupid. I am a terrible leader. I'm a terrible employee. I'm an awful spouse, right? That negative thought, self-taught, that's a very black and white. If I do this, then that means that. And it's definitely an evaluation. So black and white is about judgment. Black and white is about evaluation. Black and white is about extremes. So many of us, many of you, and I do too, live in a life of extreme. And when you realize that when you see and realize what's going on in this extreme life that you have chosen, you can change that and look at the grays in your life. So try to, there is no right or wrong. There is no perfect way. There is no, this is the only way that you do things. There's more than one way to achieve whatever it is that you want, right? And my way is not necessarily the best way. And let me give you an example of that. When I first started as an entrepreneur, I did an awful lot of training on how do you market, what's this internet network marketing stuff all about, what is the email campaign, all of this jargon and processes that entrepreneurs deal with. And I needed to learn what that meant to me. And I had many coaches and I went through a lot of training and I had many failures. And at one point, the coach that I was working with was shaking his head. He goes, I don't understand. You did everything prescribed perfectly. This should have worked. And what I saw was that I realized my perfect approach and someone else's perfect approach is not always the same. And so I needed to find what was important to me and what my perfect approach was. And I needed to give myself grace for failing and give myself a congratulations for learning and growing through that and celebrating that I now know what does not work for me. And if I know what does not work, the law of polarity tells me that I therefore know what does work. So when you're using negative self-talk or negative language, you can stop and look at the polar opposite of what you're saying and what you believe to be true and see if there is a shred of truth, a shred of reality in the total opposite. And I guarantee that the answer to that for you is going to be yes. There is definitely more ways to look at something. And there is definitely more to reality than what our little brain thinks it is. And we can always look at life and language from a completely different perspective at any moment in time. So I want to leave you with a couple of things about your brain and how it works and why it is important for you to question your reality. You see, we think in feelings and emotion and translate that into pictures. First translation, you lose a little bit of the truth. And we take that picture in our mind and we formulate words to try and communicate the essence of what that is. Again, we're translating it, therefore changing it. And we communicate out. When we communicate out, the receiver distorts because they have their own belief systems, right? Generalizes, shortcut, and distorts, generalize, and actually filters out much of the communication that is going on. And so you do that to what you receive, and you do that to what you think about yourself. So when you're feeling, oh, I'm such an idiot, stop and remember a time, the most recent time, that you felt pretty empowered and pretty smart. And it doesn't matter if it's a different situation. So for example, I might feel like an idiot at work, but man, I put together a dinner the other night that would make any chef jealous, right? I have the capability to take my knowledge and combine things in a way that creates beauty that I can share with the family. Or if you're like me, can't cook much at all, so I'd struggle with what it is that I need to put in the oven or on the stove and be very, very formulated in what I'm doing in order for it to come out even right. And yet, when it comes to what I do at work, what I do as a career, I am phenomenal. I am successful. I am loving it. And if I am happy and successful there, and I impact people and my values are being met, then it doesn't really matter about anything else. And so I think about what is great about who I am. And I think about what is positive about where I'm going. And I think about the greatness that this little being is bringing to this little world in this moment in time. And as long as I learn from my mistakes, and as long as I give grace to myself for being human and knowing how to err, then life is beautiful. And I want life to be beautiful for you. Your language creates your reality because it creates a focus. And a negative focus is going to bring negative people into your life. The positive people don't want to be around you. Let's just put it that way. Positive people don't want to be around you if you're negative, and therefore the only people that show up are the people who are going to make your negativity stronger because you're going to hold a bitch fest, right? Or you're going to hold a poor me fest. Or, you're going to hold a blame fest. That is not productive. That does not bring solutions. That does not bring joy and happiness into your life. It doesn't bring in creativity. It doesn't bring in possibilities because you're stuck in the blame. You're stuck in the shame. You're stuck in the accusations. Get unstuck. Love yourself. Listen to your language. This is Gail Kraft, the Empowering Process Podcast. And if this has brought anything up for you, please do share it, comment it. If this is an episode that you think someone else could benefit from, please let them know. Share it out. I would love to hear from you. I love you, Gail Kraft, The Empowering Process. Bye, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailkraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.